Hey, everybody. This is your host, Yoshino, and you're listening to episode number 155 of ours Decoded. This episode, I get the opportunity to talk to singer and songwriter Allie X. She's promoting her newest album, Cape God, which released on February 21st. And I originally met her in 2015 when I was commissioned to shoot her for a magazine. We've kept in touch ever since and have worked on multiple projects together. This is a really exciting episode. I was elated to be able to catch up with Allie and see how she's doing and see about her recent thoughts and philosophies and things that she's been thinking about in this current state of existence. We talk about the inception of the idea for her newest album, which was initially inspired by a 2015 HBO documentary entitled Heroin Cape Cod, USA, directed by Steven Okazaki. We also get into some of the meanings and initial inspirations for some of her new tracks on the album, including this next track entitled Susie Save Your Love, a collaboration with singer and songwriter Mitski. Before we begin the episode, please go to our iTunes page and leave us that positive review. It helps reviewers just like yourself to hear about this podcast, and the more people listen to this, the merrier. So here it is, without further ado, Susie Save Your Love off of Allie X's newest album, Cape God. Hope you enjoy it. So I appreciate you for doing this.
Thanks for having me. I've been following Artist Decoded since you started it, and you've had some really cool people on the show, so I'm honored to be here.
Well, really cool people now, including yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's been interesting. Yeah. I mean, you and I worked together back in 2014. Has it been that long?
I think it was 15, but yeah, like still 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, so much has changed since then. Especially with you and your music. And yeah, I've been listening to Cape God in preparation for this interview. And
oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good.
Thank you.
I especially love your collaboration with Mitski. I thought that was really fantastic.
Yeah, that's been like a favorite of people's for sure. And certainly one of the most like fun songs on the record. And really easy. Like that was a really easy one to write. It just, it was the first time we met and we just wrote it in one afternoon, and that was that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you meet with someone that you have like a really solid collaboration with and just kind of things just fall into place seamlessly. Is that how it felt with that particular collaboration?
Yeah, totally. And I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I did suspect when I heard her music that we were like-minded in some ways, even though she's more of an indie rock artist and I'm more in the pop world. But nowadays, these terms don't even matter that much anymore. And, when we met, we just kind of had a synergy and musically got along really well. And lyrically as well. It was just we actually wrote a few songs after that for Cape God that didn't make the record, but it was always very easy working with Mitski. She's just a really cool girl and talented musician.
Yeah, I'm curious. Well, yeah, I mean, speaking of just overall cross-pollination of genres and various art forms, I feel like some of the most interesting artwork comes from a combination of a lot of these things. For instance, I went to this talk with Gaspar Noé, and he was talking about, some of his films and some of the process behind like Enter the Void and some of the various other films like Irreversible that he did.
Mm-hmm. Incredible films.
Yeah, definitely. And he was just talking about that cognitive dissonance that he likes to do within his films. So, doing like a really serene musical scene with really aggressive, violent visuals.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was thinking about that in terms of just your work in general, on how there's that sort of cognitive dissonance, because on the surface, your music, I was just kind of taking some notes, and I'm like, it's kind of like a atmospheric synth pop or something of that nature.
Yeah.
And something that attracted me to you in terms of the visual aesthetic and style is those sort of overlying morbid curiosities and this sort of attraction to the macabre. Do you feel that you're conscious of the cognitive dissonance?
Yeah, I think I've always been conscious of it. I think I haven't used the term cognitive dissonance once. Actually, strangely enough, I had a fan ask me if he could interview me about cognitive dissonance for his school paper. And I was like, sure, probably for that reason,
Yeah.
because it's in my work. But yeah, I mean, I always love to juxtapose. Like I feel like it's the best way to represent who I am, is to have both, the ugly and the beautiful, and to have, if it's a really upbeat song, then I love having darkness be a part of it, because I feel like in my day-to-day life, in my existence, I always feel both things. And I think I hunger for that in art. So I always try to, I mean, I don't think I even try. I think it just comes out. I think that's just kind of, if you look at any of my records, and they're quite varied in sound and in aesthetic, because I like to make each one very distinct, they still all have that through line of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about when I was watching your music video for Fresh Laundry. My interpretation of it was almost this surreal internal process that is becoming visualized as you're in this house, and then you're seeing a reflection of yourself and facing that reflection of yourself. But I'm curious if that was just my interpretation and I'm putting my own perception of it on there, or what exactly made you want to write that song. And I guess, yeah, what are some of the ideas behind that?
Man, I could go on for a while, but
Go on for a while. I want to hear it. This is what we're here for.
okay. Well, Fresh Laundry is like, I guess it's just layered in a bunch of ways. Something happened with that song where I think something spiritual happened with that song, without sounding too crazy, where I was saying one thing that was expressing my pain. When I wrote, sorry, let me finish that thought. I was saying one thing that expressed my pain at the time, but I was saying something else subconsciously that was releasing me in a way that was sort of like letting me get to a higher version of myself or something. I didn't realize that till recently, but the story goes that when I wrote the original lyrics, before there was ever a song, I have a chronic illness, and I was just I was having like a bad flare at the time. I'd been sick for a month or more, and I couldn't sleep. So I was in the bath early one morning. It was like 5 a.m. or something in my Hollywood apartment. And I just remember like looking the view from like lying in the bath to the floor. It just looked like I could see the dust where the dust had gathered, and the towels were right next to my face, and they smelled kind of like mildew. And I was like, I just had this feeling of missing like really clean, fresh spaces. Like the way my mom had, kept our house really clean and fresh when I was a kid. In that moment, I thought to myself, I wish I was near fresh towels. Like I want to be near fresh laundry. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so I wrote it down. And then I was like, if I was going to continue that thought, it's been too many years of not folding, meaning not folding my laundry, not doing my laundry frequently enough, and also not asking for help because I'd been sort of isolated from my family for a while. And these days, oh, no, actually, I didn't write that line then. Then I skipped ahead to, you said you're always on my side, but what if my side has changed too much? Then tell me, who am I? And something has to die, and all that. I wrote all that in that moment, and it was all just kind of thinking about, yeah, my mom and laundry and missing the comforts of home and feeling like I'd sort of dug my grave and now I'd have to lie in it and all this stuff. And that was 2018 that I wrote that, or 2017 even. And it's just in my notes in my iPhone, and with, you know, a million other ideas and lyrics that I just kind of leave there for a rainy day. And then I think it was a year later, I was in Stockholm in what would become the beginnings of Cape God. I was out there just on a writing trip to write with a producer that I admired, not necessarily even writing for myself. Like, I thought I might be out there just to write for another artist because he's a big producer, and you just never really know when you're working with bigger producers, at least at my level, what they're going to want to do. But I got there, and he was like, his name's Oscar, by the way. He was like, I'd love to write for you. I'm a fan of your work. I was like, oh, that's cool. And he's like, do you have any ideas? And I was like, looking through my notes, I was like, well, actually, I have this idea about fresh laundry I wrote a long time ago. And I came up with a melody for it, which is the melody that you hear in the song. And I just sang it in the room a cappella. And in terms of the composition of the song, the rest is kind of history. I was there with another writer named James Allen, and the whole thing just poured out. The sound just emerged. There was no sort of questioning how we wanted it to sound or anything. Like, it all just happened. And we were really excited, and it felt like my memories of the day are not being too conscious of anything. Like like I said, it was just coming out of me. I was super jet lagged. I wasn't trying to make it anything. And when it was done, I thought, this is really interesting, really special. But it didn't really even analyze it too much. Cut to like I think it was it was summer of this year, just before I released it. And I sent it to this old roommate of mine. And she's very spiritual. And she was like telling me basically that I'd written something that had this greater significance, and that I was she said something like, your lyrics about dying are about like letting go of this former version of yourself. And like, I don't know. And I was like, you're crazy. And then I started sort of thinking about it, and I was like, and reading what I'd written and analyzing and thinking about how much I've changed since I wrote that, and where I am now, and how different I feel. And I think there's something to that. And I guess just that whole idea is really cool to me. Like, the fact that art can be that, you know, it's not like I'm the first person to say that, but yeah, like that you're communicating this sort of thing that you don't even know that you're communicating, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think, it's really interesting because I've been writing a lot, and it's almost like sifting through the subconscious, especially when you're tapped in and you're writing something that's so honest, and maybe it seems non sequitur at the time, but then you start piecing it together like a puzzle, and then you have just these disparate elements that are coming together, and it reflects so highly about the time that you're at, that point in life that you're at. And I'm curious, like, what is your writing process usually like in general? Do you find that it's almost like a sifting of disparate elements, or do you feel that it's very subconscious, or what's your take on your writing process?
It's both of those things. I'll tell you what it's not is, like, I work with a lot of pop writers out in Los Angeles, and I admire them greatly, but you know, they write differently than me. A lot of them, they'll arrive with a melody and a hook and a lyric, and it's radio ready, and they know that it'll sell, and they know the right things to say. If they're writing for Selena Gomez, because she would think this, like, it's very that, you know. And I've never been able to do that. With me, it's way more sifting through disparate elements, or going into my unconscious mind. I tend to write, when I'm writing lyrics, I tend to write pages and pages of things that don't make sense, and then I piece them together.
Mm.
Or like I'll write sometimes for my song like Paper Love, for instance. It took me the entire summer to write those lyrics, even though they don't even make that much sense. Like they just, I needed them to I needed them to sing right. Like I needed them to sound, the sound of the vowels to be right. And I needed to get almost in a poetic way the idea across. And I just know when something doesn't feel right. So I just keep writing. I must have written like 10 verses, and then, oh, well, this first line of this verse goes really well with this second line of the eighth verse and that sort of thing. Like, I don't know if I'm proud of how I write, but it's definitely that it's never streamlined. It's very like, but then, another example that is completely different is the one I just gave, which is Fresh Laundry, where I was feeling something and I wrote it down and even though I didn't really know what I was saying and what it meant, it did come out really quickly. So I don't know. It's kind of one of the two, but I'm definitely not like, ooh, this is the perfect rhyme for this word. And like, it's never that simple, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the more that in general as creatives, the more that we can hone in to that unique thing that makes us unique and put ourselves in those positions where we can create honestly. I think, it doesn't really matter necessarily how you create.
Yeah, I feel like honesty is like almost the most important thing to me in art and in real life these days. I just value it so highly. I think it's because we live in LA where it's, everything is smoke and mirrors and everything is dollar signs and everything is, I don't know. I just feel like I just want rawness these days. I just want honesty. And that's what I think is most important to me as a person and as an artist, at least at this point.
Definitely. Do you think, I mean, it's really interesting going back onto the cognitive dissonance thing, but I always thought that you were very interesting because of that juxtaposition between pop music and these aesthetic qualities that you have within your music videos and within the visual aesthetics that you like. Mm-hmm. Do you think that at one point or at some point in your career, you've been seduced by those sort of external factors such as the glamour and the theatrical elements of it all? Or like what's your take on that has made you arrive to the honesty aspects?
Well, I've always considered myself an honest person, but I think in the beginning when I started this project in 2014 was when I put out the first song. It's not that I wasn't being honest. If you listen to the lyrics of Catch, they're very they're pretty cutting and they're pretty dark. But the whole thing was just shrouded in mystery and veiled a bit, and that's because I wasn't ready to be vulnerable publicly. I wasn't ready to even show my eyes then. I used to always wear sunglasses and I just wasn't ready. And I think throughout the years of doing this and getting comfortable and, establishing a relationship with the people that support me and listen to my music and meeting them in person at shows, like that's been a big thing for me. And just growing up, like just becoming an adult, like with this record, I really just felt ready to tell this story, this painful story that really carved me into the person I am that I've never been able to tell before. I was never even able to talk about it with my friends, let alone make it into a record that the whole world can hear. But I've just changed and grown so much that I did feel ready to do that. And my soul was telling me that by putting it into these lyrics, like in this kind of effortless way as well. I think like it was like I was telling myself in a way, like this is ready to be said. Like you can say it now and you know how to say it now. That was the other thing. Like I never wanted to tell it in the wrong way. Like I wanted to give my story I knew one day I'd be ready, and I knew when I was ready, I would give it sort of the tone and the importance that it deserved.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Like I wanted to do my teenage self who went through all this stuff. I wanted to do her justice. So I don't know. It's all getting kind of confusing explaining it, but yeah, like I just reached a point where I was ready to be honest, and where I found musically the right sound and tone and voice to do so.
Yeah, I think that's what's beautiful about music too, is that, I mean, it's almost interesting that we create genres and subgenres of music, because essentially it's just frequencies coming together and creating some sort of what intelligibly we think is sound, or we categorize as sound. But yeah, I think, it's just interesting how like all these abstract feelings that accumulate and come together. And I mean, for you, like, what drew you to music in the first place?
I don't even remember. I mean, I don't know of a time where I wasn't singing. Like my earliest memories are of singing and expressing myself in that way. I always wanted to sing. And strangely, I always had this just real confidence about it. Like, it's funny when I look back at videos of me as a really young kid, like performing for my family or whatever on VHS. And I wasn't that good. Like I wasn't that good of a singer. Like, but I just had this real belief in myself. And man, like I wish that I had that belief in other areas of my life, because my life would have been easier, It just blows my mind how deeply insecure I am in so many ways, but how with that one thing, I never had any doubt that I would do this, and I never, for that reason, I never gave up. And with every challenge that I've faced in this career path, and there have been so many, they phase me, but I never stop. I never consider stopping.
What do you think is the most personal track on this record, if you can name one?
I think if I had to name one, I would say Regulars. It's sort of just like, I don't know what it is about it, but usually my own songs don't give me chills, but that one does. Most times that I listen to it, I think it just put into words. What did you say a minute ago about all these abstract feelings we have inside of us? Yeah, like it just, you as human beings, we have these abstract feelings inside of us, and sometimes to try to explain them verbally to someone, they almost lose their importance and their depth. And for that reason, I think that's one of the reasons I had such trouble talking about things for such a long time. But anyway, Regulars puts out into the world those abstract feelings in a way that I am happy about. Like I feel like I couldn't explain to you verbally even what Regulars is about, but the song does the job. And that's just like a really liberating feeling. I mean, that's the privilege of being an artist, I guess, is that we get to express ourselves in that way that's satisfying, We get to be seen and heard. So that for me is why Regulars is probably the most personal track.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like when I was doing some research on you and on this new album, you said something in an interview with Billboard to the effect, actually, I think I have it written here, but with this one, I'd say there's a thin layer of ice, but that's it. It's a pretty personal, pretty intimate body of work. And
yeah,
I'm just like reading off your quotes. I'm actually just going to transcribe for this episode. I'm just going to transcribe your entire billboard.
Your other quotes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I'm actually just going to cut you out of it, and I'm going to transcribe everything and then say what you said. And it's just going to be me talking to myself, essentially.
Now there's a concept for a podcast.
It's called My Guest is Irrelevant.
My guest is irrelevant. I love that.
It's a completely narcissistic podcast that I hope everyone will enjoy.
Oh
Find
my
us
God.
on Spotify and iTunes.
Make sure to leave a positive review.
Please leave a positive review. We need your positive reviews, please.
Oh God, that's funny.
But I guess with that, what I was trying to get at is, so I was also reading in various articles that you were inspired to create Cape Cod off of this documentary in 2015 that came out on HBO called Heroin Cape Cod, USA.
Yeah. Well, I'll start at the thing you quoted me about, which is the thin layer of ice. I feel like that it's sort of the same as what I was saying earlier with, just being more veiled and being more shrouded in mystery and all this stuff. And it wasn't that what I was saying before wasn't truthful, but I felt like I was refracting it through like a crystal or something, and it was transforming into something else. Where with Cape Cod, yeah, it's like there's definitely an element of fantasy to it. Cape Cod is not a real place, obviously. It's a place in my mind. But it's just that thin layer of ice over dark waters that if you stepped on it, it wouldn't be enough to hold your weight. It's very thin. So that's what that quote meant. And then what was the actual question you asked me? Yeah.
I was asking about Heroin Cape Cod, USA.
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, that's kind of a good segue because that is where I got that imagery.
Yeah.
So that's a documentary directed by Stephen Okazaki. And
Japanese guy,
yeah. And
I am also Japanese. It's like the reason why I said that is because it's just so stupid. Right?
I too am a Japanese guy.
I too have Japanese heritage.
Oh my God. So anyway, I saw this documentary. Me and my partner, we watch a lot of film. He's a real film buff, and almost every night we're watching some new film. And so we saw this documentary, and it just really struck me. Like it struck me more than films do normally, to the point where I was like thinking about it a few days later. And I was in a writing room, and I was writing some lyrics for a song. And I don't know if for some reason I decided to put myself in the mind of this girl that I saw in the documentary, and these kind of interesting and personal lyrics resulted, and I just kind of took note of it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why that was such a, I don't know, why that was such a strong exercise or whatever. And so I don't know, I just kind of had this documentary and the imagery and the characters and their experiences, which by the way, if I need to explain, it's about the opiate crisis in America, specifically in Massachusetts, and even more specifically focused on Cape Cod, which is known to everyone as a tourist town and as this kind of idyllic place that people go in the summer. This documentary focused on, it felt more like the fall and winter. I think it was. I saw it twice and I haven't seen it for about a year. But anyway, the whole thing just sparked some stuff in me, and I didn't even really know why. And, that first exercise that I just described, that happened before I ever even went to Stockholm. And on that first trip to Stockholm, I remember when I was writing the lyrics to Fresh Laundry and I was all jet lagged and out of it and everything was just coming out, I do remember thinking about that girl again and like being in this sort of, I don't know, I was picturing this kind of derelict building in this shitty apartment and like looking out at people and wishing that I could be like those people. Like that was all in my mind, like in an abstract or maybe in a visual way while I was writing the Fresh Laundry lyrics. And then the same thing, like the next 2 days we did the Rings a Bell and we did regulars. And it was the same thing where like, I just kept in this weird way, like thinking of her. And then I was thinking of the imagery of the East Coast and I was just, but at the same time, I was writing things that were really personal and that I'd felt for a long time, specifically when I was in high school and going through a lot of stuff. And so it was this weird kind of amalgamation of all those things. And I wasn't questioning it. And I wasn't even telling my co-writers about it, like James and Oscar, who are in the room. It's just kind of going with it. And so I arrived back from that Stockholm trip and I listened to all that stuff. And I just thought, this is interesting. This is kind of like all about me, but it's almost as if like this film has been like a catalyst. So I don't know, that at that point I started to really, I like to figure out my concept early on when I'm writing a record. And so I sort of took that time to figure out like, what is this about? What am I writing about? And I basically, and why has this documentary sort of launched me into all these old feelings from high school? And I realized that I related to the characters, basically. Like I related. I've never had... way? Yeah, because I've never had an opioid addiction, and I've never done heroin. I've had a few like addictive things, but usually not with like substance. And I realized it was more emotional. It was about how sort of dissociated they were from in their everyday lives, from their feelings, how they were like living on this surface level, how they had this great shame that they bore the weight of all the time. It was their isolation from their families and their inability to speak to their families in a way where they could just kind of lean on them for help. It was isolation. It was feeling like an outsider. It was all those things were things that I really related to, and reminded me of what it was like when I got really, really sick when I was young and had to hide and had to go through high school that way. The whole thing is kind of abstract because it's like a documentary about an opioid crisis that somehow was the catalyst for me to speak about that. But for whatever reason, that's how it happened. I don't know, when I'm speaking about it, I make sure now when I'm speaking about it to say like, I just don't want people to get the wrong idea that like, oh, she's talking about heroin because she wants to be cool. She wants to be badass, like girl that talks about the opioid and it's like, I have not experienced what the people in the film have experienced. I haven't even experienced it secondhand. I haven't had a family member. So I'm not an authority on the matter. It was simply a beautiful film that like launched me into my own old feelings. And that's the significance of that film.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's totally justifiable. And as long as you're approaching the subject matter with a certain amount of empathy and sympathy towards the characters, well, the actual people, because it's a documentary.
Yeah.
And, as long as you're socially conscious about that and, put that out there, I think that's totally fine because inspiration can come literally from anywhere. I could be walking on walking out on the street, walking down Sunset Boulevard, and I find this dirty sock. And for some reason, I connect with that dirty sock or something, and
Yeah, totally.
I guess I'm relating this with my like street photography, and I'm take photos of just random detritus or random decapitated things, and
Wigs,
before wigs,
dirty wigs, old televisions, decapitated teddy bears.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think inspiration can really come from anywhere. And I was actually, relating to what you were talking about. I wrote this thing down the other day, and I'm just going to read it to you really quick.
Okay.
You will forever be a mystery to yourself if you do not analyze the things you are trying to escape.
Haha. Yep. That hit me instantaneously.
And
yeah.
I don't know. I think it's just a lot of the times, art is an expression, and sometimes, especially if you're working on a commercial level or working to essentially sell your product, whatever it is that you're producing, essentially, like it can get kind of watered down. I'm not saying this for you necessarily, but I'm just saying that I've noticed it within myself, that my vision gets watered down because it's almost like I'm working against myself in that regard and trying to hide things and escape from things that are hard to deal with, and I've just encountered that in my past.
I totally relate. And it's just that's just the thing that, if you are an artist and you want to make a living, you're going to have to deal with that in one way or another. And it's funny, everything being completely at a standstill right now because of COVID-19 is horrible, obviously. And so many people are suffering horribly. But the actual act of slowing down for me has been good. I think it's been, the first time in probably 4 years where I've actually had some space in my head to, I don't know, just like be answering those questions that you're bringing up right now, like to just have some quiet, to not have an inbox that has 30 emails unanswered every day when I wake up in the morning, to not feel the need to make back all the money invested on me, to not feel competitive with everyone around me who's doing better because we're all in the same boat. We're all slowed down. Like I've really found that just slowing down this much has been, I don't know, just a lot of stuff has been coming up, and my creativity is like flowing in a way that it hasn't been in a while. So I don't know. I just thought of that when you said that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I feel a very similar way. Do you think that this time is, although it's obviously detrimental and yet unifying at the same time, that we're all going through a similar sort of existential crises, but do you feel that you found a lot of clarity?
Yeah, I feel like I'm finding it. Especially we're in week 4 now in the US and of like the quarantine lockdown situation. And week 1 was just kind of like, I don't know, kind of like more relaxed and almost just felt like a normal, like if I had a week off or something. Week 2, I got horribly depressed, unmotivated, like paralyzed and self-hating. Then week 3, I started to commit to like a schedule and to, I don't know, just making stuff. Like I made myself make stuff. Then I got in a rhythm, and now I'm just feeling like I'm getting, I don't know, just a lot of clarity, a lot of new ideas, even with regards to the way my business is structured and money and like people that I work with and my fans and Like there's a lot of clarity there. And then on the creative side, I'm just getting really inspired. I'm getting a lot of ideas. I just feel kind of like free, more free than I felt in a while.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I have a feeling that while having a contemplative process and having art as a medium, I have a feeling that this is going to be a really important time for that, especially to be able to have a voice, to be able to talk to people, to help inspire people during a time that seems detrimental or seems uh, like a void. And it's almost like
Yeah.
everyone's going through this grieving process, like the 5 stages of grieving. And
Yeah, I know. And I've definitely experienced that. You know, what you just said, it makes me think of like, I think that the fact that the world is all going through a contemplative process right now, I think when we reemerge, whenever that is, might be a long time from now, I think just the general ethos of culture is bound to change because everyone is sort of forced to go inward right now and to um, be thoughtful, be more thoughtful than we're used to in a rapid paced modern life that we're all used to. I think it's going to be, there's so many bad things that are happening right now and that will result from this. But I also think there's a positive side is kind of what I'm saying. I think everyone being thoughtful in whatever way that is. I think that culture. I think culture is likely to be affected in a positive way.
yeah, a thing that has been constantly coming up for me and just my train of thought is this idea of adaptive resilience.
Hmm.
And to be able to be challenged externally from outside forces, you can either internalize that and turn that into a negative thing, or you can turn it into a positive thing. And, I think, yeah, it's why, these conversations are so good and enriching for ourselves and for other people, because it shines some light on the shroud of darkness that's been overlapping the entire world. And,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've just been thinking about that a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess well, I'll have one more question for you. And
Okay.
what's some advice that you would give to artists and creatives?
Hmm. I mean, there's so many things, but the thing that whenever I get this question, I guess what I always go back to is what I wish someone had told me as a young aspiring artist,
Hmm.
which is, I mean, I used to just always wonder, how do I get from here where I am to there, which is an artist who is known and gets to make music and gets to make a living. And if you're wondering that, listener, my answer is there is no clear way to do that. It's, of course, there's 1,000 different paths you can take that will all lead somewhere, and could result in that. But for me, it was way more about finding, uh, always trying to be better, like always writing, always trying to find the best version of myself, not settling. And to this day, I'm always trying to evolve. And then the other thing is just the word that you just used, resilience. Like, you really just have to keep going. I have been told no way too many times to count, like thousands of times. I'm told no every day still in one way or another. And
Hmm.
my advice to artists is to just keep going. And if you think that you can do something else as a job and be happy, then you should do it. And if you think there's no way that you can do anything but your art, then that's definitely a sign that you are an artist and that you just have to keep going.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, to parlay off of what you were just saying, I think no is just one of those microcosm challenges to where it might actually even be a gift. If someone said no to you on this particular thing, maybe you don't want to work with them anyways. In hindsight, you can be like, oh, wow, well, actually, I didn't want that to go that way anyways. But for some reason, my ego was telling me that I needed to have this person in my life or have this accomplishment in my life.
Totally.
But in the grand scheme of things, it would have taken you down a different direction that could have been detrimental.
Totally. And in retrospect, there are so many of those that I'm like, oh, I'm really glad that I did get that no, because it led me in this direction. And I'm really glad that it didn't work out with that person because I got to meet this person. Or I'm really glad, I mean, here's a real life example. I'm really glad that I didn't sign to a major label, because I'm now in a situation with I have a profit share with like an investor. And when I did that deal, it was my only option. And now I couldn't be in a better situation. Like the landscape of the music industry has changed so much that now I'm in this very advantageous position where I get to own part of my masters, and I'm able to move freely. I'm able to release as I want. And I don't know, at the time where I didn't get any of those major label deals because I did all the meetings and something just went really wrong that I can't get into, but like it was heartbreaking, and it was like, well, I guess that was my shot and I blew it. And now I feel like the opposite of that. So I don't know, just thought that might be a good example to anyone who's out there and feels disheartened listening to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, there's going to be those challenges, no matter, it's just a human experience. No matter what field you're in, you're always going to be presented with these challenges. And it's really what makes you is how you act in those challenges and how you are able to dissect those challenges as positive things or negative things. And it's also good to feel. It's also good to feel grief and to be able to allow yourself to feel, not hide from that.
I completely agree. I think that's one thing that the younger generations are better at, I think, than, my parents' generation. I think that the younger the generation gets, the better they are about being open about feelings and gender and sexuality and all these things. That's something I feel very optimistic about as we move into the future.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother subject, just gender and sexuality and being okay with breaking down those sort of gender roles, I think is a really interesting topic that maybe we'll do on another podcast. But,
yeah, no, we should. That's definitely a whole other can of worms there. But yeah. Definitely, I just have so much faith. I really gotten to know the younger generation because my fans are the younger generation. And, they are smart and they are expressive about their feelings. They are open. And I have a lot of faith in them, in that generation. So I don't know, kind of a random way to end our interview, but
I have faith in the next generation. Allie X for mayor.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Well, seriously, thanks. It was really good just to catch up in general, and I appreciate you for doing this. Seriously.
Yeah, I am appreciative of being able to speak on your platform, and we should make something together again. It's been too long.
I completely agree. We totally should.
Well,
but yeah. All right. Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye.